Villiers Revealed has taken us on an amazing journey of curatorial discovery, exploring LGBTQ themes with John Slee, finding out more about the fascinating life of George Villiers and talking to art history and costume experts to help us understand more about this wonderful portrait. Let's take a closer look at what George Villiers is wearing in this portrait. Image was everything in the early 17th century court, and Villiers had to make sure he looked the part. He came from a relatively humble Leicestershire family. There is actually a description of him from 1615, before his rise to fame and fortune, at a horse race in Cambridgeshire in an old black suit, broken out in diverse places. But by 1619, he was firmly established as the royal favourite and had to maintain his status at court by dressing richly and spending lavishly. Villiers was careful to cultivate his image, and he had many portraits painted during his short life. He has full brushed back chestnut hair, which was a fashionable style for young men in the mid-1610s. Our portrait was painted around 1619, and he has a wispy moustache. In later portraits, he has more elaborate facial hair. He wears a black tailored jacket called a doublet over a shirt, with breeches and a cape. The doublet and breeches are made from a black silk or satin with a barely discernible pattern. This would be either woven into the fabric or the result of tiny slashes. Beneath his doublet would be a shirt made of Holland linen, which was imported from the Netherlands. The doublet and the breeches were tied together by the points, silk ribbons with metal aglets or tags that by this date were often decorative rather than essential. He has a cloak over his left arm, possibly of a matching silk or a velvet. Many luxury fabrics like this were imported, usually from Italy, and were a sign of wealth and a wish to be fashionably dressed. Dressing in black was an expensive choice, and it was an unstable dye. We often associate wearing black with mourning, but it was worn in other circumstances too. However, it is possible that this painting was painted after Queen Anne's death in March 1619, and that his outfit is court mourning attire. There are carefully chosen white highlights in the painting: his face, ruff, cuff and shoes, and the gold of the sword hanger and hatband glow from the sombre background. The delicate falling ruff around his neck is edged with Italian lace and matches the one cuff that we can see. We think that his ruff and cuffs would have been dyed with a yellow starch. There is a Copperton hat on the table beside him. This has a high crown and shallow brim and was probably made from felted beaver fur, the most expensive type of hat. Hats were worn by gentlemen even indoors and only removed in the presence of the monarch. His beautiful gloves are possibly made from soft Spanish leather and had deep gauntlet cuffs made of blue silk or satin with gold and silver embroidery. The very elongated fingers were usual. These are display gloves, often signifying a gift or an event. The wide gauntlet allows for the lace wrist cuffs not to get crushed. Gloves and other garments were often scented, essential in an age when personal hygiene was limited. His low-heeled shoes are made of soft suede leather with a punch decoration and are softly tied with a blue ribbon rose fastening them. At this date, shoes were straight and could be worn on either foot. The only jewellery worn by Buckingham in this portrait is the Lesser George of the Order of the Garter, which he wears on the blue ribbon around his neck. This shows St. George, the patron saint of the order. On his left leg, he wears the actual garter, on which you can see part of the order's motto, Honi soit qui mal y pense, shame be he who thinks evil of it. Maintaining an appropriate wardrobe was costly. Clothes were expensive and would all be handmade by a tailor. We know from accounts from this period that to make a doublet and hose cost about 20 shillings in labour, but the cost of the fabrics like silk, velvet and lace was much, much more. The richness and wealth of Villiers' wardrobe was in shocking contrast to what the general population could afford. Villiers was made Lord Admiral of the Navy in 1619, and we know that providing enough clothing for ordinary sailors was a constant challenge. So what we see here is the result of immense wealth and privilege.